Hey everyone, Sean here, and welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be sitting down and be talking about Sinners. Not The Sinners, just Sinners. This movie got me curious. I went ahead and went out to watch it in theaters not too long ago. I think this movie has been out for just about 2 weeks, or a little over 2 weeks at this point. So I'm going to go ahead. If you can go watch it, I do recommend it. I think it's a pretty good watch. It is worth your time. But seeing a number of these reviews that have been raving it, giving from 8s to 9s to even 10s, I had some expectations for this movie, and I came out somewhat a little less than what I've expected, because there are some imperfections, but overall I think it's still gets my sort of 2 thumbs ups, but it's not a perfect movie by any means. So the movie is featuring Michael B. Jordan, I think, and then one of the new faces I think is Miles Catton or Catan. Forgive me for butchering the name, but I felt like he gave a pretty good performance for what the role he was offered and what the material he had to work with. So just like a very instant, quick recommendation, yes, I would give it. Go ahead and watch it in theaters, because it's been out for quite a bit. I was able to see it because I watched it on a Tuesday. First off, it's been out for that long, and I actually paid half a price for a movie ticket. So I was like, yes, I would absolutely take this opportunity. And for the most part, I was glad that I was able to catch this movie. I think it's still worth a watch, but it is a good one-time watch in my opinion. So the premise goes like these twins, both being played by Michael B. Jordan. That of itself is a trip, but it's a pretty fun little thing for what it is. Playing twins in a movie, when it's a single actor, it's always a neat little trick. But yes, these twins, they are experienced with combat, as they kind of hint throughout the movie. They come from a sort of a gangster background, more specifically from Chicago, I believe, where they lived in Chicago at one point. Well, I think they were born in Mississippi, which I believe that's where the movie takes part for the most part. They lived a life somewhere in Chicago at one point with their father, which they did, yes, mention quite a bit throughout the story. But after I think it was some sort of robbery or something, they had their little gangster venture. They come back to Mississippi and try to set up a joint of sorts. I think it's specifically called a juke joint, as I learned, kind of a newer word that I've learned from over the years. But yeah, a joint of sorts, so that the black community, kind of under some sort of slavery at the time ish. It's weird because it's in 1932, so it's still like, I don't know, it's a kind of a weird in between between the black slavery sort of period, and of course World War One, or sometime after World War One, of course, and we're like creeping into World War II territory here. But yes, the 1930s. But you'll kind of know why this is a thing, at least in this particular place. Anyways, so they go ahead and bought this joint, right, this in the land around it, from this salesman or landlord, and they then set up a bar of sorts, the joint, and recruiting a number of people, which for the most part featured like pretty colorful characters of various backgrounds and ethnicities, including Chinese, even of course more black folks, and then even a half I think it was like half white, half black person and such, like all walks of more walks of life than one would expect for a movie like this. Pretty neat, but the process of getting there was a long process, it felt. But it does build up a lot of character. And once they get to the said joint, they play a lot of music, but then stuff happens, and that's where pretty much it all goes from there. That's like the basic sort of premise. It's all about having a joint, stuff happens, but the overall themes, or the overall sort of arcing sort of theme around it, is that the blues, right, which of course music does play a large part of the black culture, especially blues, is that there's always this saying that, you know, blues and such music is kind of like the music of the devil, as some people would say, or especially back in the day would say. And whenever you play said music, you know, this was said in the beginning, that it attracts both the good and the evil. And you could say, you could take away a lot from that, like that music is a universally loved thing. It's like a universal language that everyone kind of gravitates towards, even if you don't understand it. It's like something you love or hate or whatever. I mean, it's something for everybody, you know? So that plays a large part of it as to why this is all happening, especially with blues. And it really kind of takes that saying to a literal level. So that becomes, it has a bit of everything. It has this sort of serious tone to it, but then you have the B movie flavor thrown in there, and a number of other things that kind of felt very reminiscent of, even like Tarantino's Dusk Till Dawn. You have some little bit of like that gangster flick in there. A little bit of romance. You do have some action too. Even like, you know, if you like guns, you know, you'll find this pretty enjoyable at some points. So it's actually got a little bit of everything. And so you'll come out of that theater a little more satiated, more than you expect, more ways than one. I'm trying to dance around this premise without spoiling it, you know, but it's basically going to be you're going to take away a lot of things, right, if you're willing to do so. And this movie can be enjoyed on a surface level, but you kind of have to open your mind a little more than that. There's a lot more to it. There's you know, the themes of being free, the theme of the whole, like, you know, music, this music is the devil's music or whatever, and all that. Oh, and oh yeah, there's quite a bit of sex scenes. There's a lot of the consumption of the taco, if you know what I'm saying. I'm gonna leave it at that. I think it's for the most part done pretty good, although some notes or some executions could have been done better. But along the way, I think this movie was shot pretty well. I think the cinematography and then the vision, the artistic side of things, were done very, very well. A lot of great shots of the characters. You really see their expressions and the emotions and the tones and the atmosphere and everything. You feel the energy for the most part. Oh, and you even have some musicals in there, I think, in some ways, if you kind of can look at it that way. It's not like a theater kind of musical, but like, you know, what you kind of expect from something of a movie that features blues, you know. So there's a scene where you see both the good and the bad having their own flair of music, if that makes sense. And maybe it does go on a little long for both sides, and maybe it does go a little overboard in some aspects, but I think for the most part it is entertaining for what it is. I just wish it was able to answer some questions and wrap up some things by the end, but it didn't for some reason. But again, overall, I think the dialogue was well done. It was well written for what it was. There were some inconsistencies with the rules that were established within the movie, but with everything done pretty well for the most part, I think I was able to kind of willingly overlook that and give it a pretty good score by the end of it, right? And speaking of which, by the end of it, there will be multiple credit scenes. So there's one for like right after the credits are rolling, the middle of it, I think, but then there's one by the end, which I was thrown off because the lights were turning on. And I'm like, oh, I think the movie is over. So I just walked out. But then I heard stuff happening, and I missed out on this little last bit of the post-credit scene. But it's something relatively minor. I guess it depends on how you look at it, but I think it's pretty minor for the most part. So you're not really missing out on a lot. But the fact that, all right, sorry about that. The microphone receiver actually needed charging, so that's why I had to stop for a moment. But I want to just emphasize the point that just sit through the movie. Don't walk out until the credits are actually over, because you'll miss that end credits scene. So just putting that out there for those who haven't seen the movie just yet. But anyways, I wanted to overall say that while the movie was great, the execution on some things, like I said, were a little weak, and it could have used a little more improvement, especially by the big action scene, the climax of it. There was so much build up to it. It felt like, but the actual execution of it left me somewhat unsatisfying. If anything, the very final action scene was a lot more satisfying than the one before it, and it didn't quite do or didn't take the time to really build up to that, unless you're willing to really look into what certain characters say, especially with what the villain has to say in the movie. Great movie though. Maybe not like very great, but it's a great movie, I think. So it does have reoccurrences of this theme, like such as slavery and oppression and all that in between. The music was, of course, well composed. The actors play their characters great, I think, for the most part. Maybe there were a couple of characters that I wish to care more, but they didn't provide enough time to give him like the proper backstory to make you feel like, okay, these are major characters for what they are supposed to be. So I wish there was some more time spent on certain aspects as well, especially with these characters that you're supposed to be, caring about, especially the ones that are like help running the joint. And there were some like confusing moments where I was like completely thrown to a different direction, but then it kind of just came out to be like a nothing burger, which I will explain more in the spoilers side of things. But again, it's a good movie, great movie even. But I think with what expectations I set up for myself based on all these other people like really praising it, raving and stuff like that, I think in that instance this movie is a little slightly overrated, but still worth a watch. So with that, I think I'm going to pretty much give somewhere between a 7 and an 8. So I'm going to go in the middle here for this time. I was kind of like fighting between those two numbers, and I'm just going to go with a 7.5 just because it's a good movie. It does set up these characters pretty well. I think with the time they're given to these characters, I think those scenes were very interesting. A lot of talking, like Tarantino movies, as long as it's very, very engaging, and especially with Smoke and Stack, the two main characters, really. And then you see some of their backgrounds and stuff like that. They like throw out some hints here and there about like more stuff about themselves in a way, and sometimes the secondary characters did get some hints of more character. But I wish, again, some other secondary characters got a little more time, especially with Bo and Grace, right? And then the action, the sort of overall execution could have been done better, but the other action scene was actually pretty satisfying to watch. The conclusion and stuff like that did wrap up pretty nicely, with some exceptions. So that's why those little gaps kind of add up to that 7.5. It just quite did not hit it out of the park for me anyway. So that's pretty much all I got here without spoiling things. So again, 7.5, but it's still a pretty strong recommendation. You can go watch it, especially if you love Michael B. Jordan, if you like blues, you like some action, a little bit of gangster stuff, you know, some, you know, like character pieces. I think Ryan Coogler, who is the director of this movie, did a pretty good job. I heard he has some like other good works too, so maybe I'll like look into those someday. But yes, he is. But you know, besides Black Panther, because yes, he is the director for at least the first Black Panther. I don't know about the second one, but the first one, yes, he was the director for that. And I remember that movie being pretty good, pretty solid for a Marvel movie. So there is that. That is something to take away from. But yeah, for this one, pretty good as well, with some apparent imperfections. But yeah. Anyways, that's all I got. So that's it for me, without me spoiling things. So I will go into the spoiler section now. So for those who are going to head out, thank you very much. And for those who are willing to stick around, we will go into spoilers right now. Okay, so hopefully I don't take too long for the spoiler section, but there are things I did want to discuss right away, and that is the whole rules, or the rules of being a vampire in this movie. While it does execute the old, like the classic rules of being a vampire, right? You know, for example, vampires can't enter a house uninvited. They have to wait to be invited, or you know, a place. They had to be invited in order for them to actually enter. It's like a part of a curse. I don't know why it's like that, but that's how it goes for vampires. At least for old school vampires anyway, which is kind of funny. It really actually takes that thing seriously in this movie, but I do appreciate that because, you know, it's a classic thing. It's a traditional thing. But there are some inconsistencies I found with the laws or rules established for vampires specifically in this movie. And so it's hard to say like, because there's the head vampire, which is Remick, right? And I think it was mentioned from Annie that even if you kill the head vampire, the other vampires won't like turn back, or you know, they're free of it or whatever, or somewhat, or whatever, however it's put, but it won't turn them back. I think they're still vampires. But I guess, you know, the whole, like, because they share memories, I guess they share each other's pain, right, with the head vampire. So if the head vampire got hit in the head with the silver thing stuck in there, they all felt it, right? But isn't silver supposed to be deadly on vampires? So I thought that would have done it, but the sun came up, so they died there. So that's another classic rule being established, or being celebrated again, I guess you could say, which is, yes, the sun will kill them if they don't hide away. Another thing, very classic, is garlic. They hate garlic, and I guess garlic water or pickled garlic juice will even do it as well, because it has, yes, the essence of garlic. And garlic, yes, being very strong, as someone who does consume garlic pretty frequently. Pretty strong stuff, but very, very tasty. If you use it right, of course. But anyway, yeah. So obviously the garlic is also part of the rules. And of course, when you bite someone as a vampire, they also turn into vampires. So that, and I guess in this case, it's a permanent asphyxiation. So it's a permanent fix. You can't go back. And that of itself is involving with, well, trapping the soul. They can't get out. So it causes them to kind of like go into this like sort of rage mode. So that's why they become evil. That's why they become the evil version of themselves. But then you have, of course, what was it? Stack, right? I think Stack was the one who got bit in the throat by his girlfriend. I forget her name. but she's like the half black, half white person. Mary, I think. Yeah, Mary is the one who gets bitten first from the evil vampires, and then goes back inside, but then has to be invited. Like, oh, like what's his name? The bodyguard, Cornbread. That's right. Cornbread is the bodyguard. Of course, unfortunately, he doesn't. He didn't catch it, but she asked to be invited back in, even though it's, Stack's, ex-girlfriend, whatever. And she should have been well known enough to be able to come back inside without asking. And so she was able to sneak in, tries to make out with Stack, bites him in the throat, in the neck, and there he went. And of course he turned into a vampire himself. But for whatever reason, of course, the movie has to kind of be a little over the top and tongue in cheek with their writing. They gotta be cute with the writing. That these two, of course, are the strong-willed individuals. So somehow they were able to kind of like snap out of it in a few moments. So there was a moment where Annie gets bit, and Smoke, because that's his wife, right? She asks him to kill her if she is about to turn, or before she turns. And so he fulfills that promise. And from that moment, Mary realizes that happening, and she's like, no, like, she actually snaps out, and she's like herself again for that moment. And she's like, she sees it, and she is shocked, actually shocked. I think along with Stack as well, which is, again, strange. And so it kind of plays that sort of convenience, it's so, right? Yeah, only these two are strong-willed and stuff like that. And I guess you could also point out another inconsistency of like, why is it that like Stack is still evil if he's self-aware, along with Annie as well. But I guess you could say that Remick is still in control, so he's still kind of like making them kill more to create more vampires. But once Remick and the rest of the vampires burn away from the sun, then that's when Stack and Mary were able to escape and pretty much were able to be free in a way. And speaking of which, being free, right? Is it really freedom when you're a vampire, right? When you have to follow all these other rules as a vampire, like, I'm pretty sure you can't see a reflection of them in the mirror. You can't go out during the day unless you're like a vampire lord or something, like the Hellsing anime series or something. But anyway, well, I think he's like a super vampire, right? But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Anywho, so I'm pretty sure they have to follow all these rules, right? I wonder if they have to be in the coffin with the soil of their birthplace, right? I don't know if that's taking it that far, but I wonder, right, if that's also a part of the rules of being a vampire. The point being, though, is that they say they're free, but they really, right? So that kind of gets you thinking, are they really free as vampires? And I say not really. And it's ironic also because by being a vampire, you're trapping your soul. They're undead, so they're pretty much unrested, right? They need to be laid to rest, but this vampire thing, right, is keeping them trapped, for their souls. So there's a lot of irony there, because they're so powerful, and they're like ageless or immortal and like this and this and that, impervious to bullets, your conventional bullets. I guess you have some degrees of freedom, and depending on your perspective. I actually went to this movie thinking that, yeah, it will have vampires in it, but I don't know if the whole vampire thing is a spoiler, so that's why I didn't like mention it too hard during the spoiler-free movie, or the spoiler-free review part of the movie review. I mean, I guess it is neat in the sense that, yes, you see the vampires beyond right? Beyond this time period, how they live in a way, even though they don't really show it, you can kind of like imagine, because there's that end credit scene. Of course, there was a scene I did want to talk about also. It's like right at the end, or the end of the climax, I guess you could say. It's like right before the vampires die. There was a scene where Preacher Boy / Sammy was running out. He almost broke his leg in the process from jumping off the roof or whatever, that part of the or whatever you call it, that the barn house. He was running into the little pond or whatever. Remick goes right after him. I wish then Preacher Boy would have gotten him distracted enough to be able to play more blues, so that the vampires can like be distracted and be like, oh, yeah, this is great music, because it would have like played a little more into the fact that yes, everybody loves music, but instead Remick already grabbed him. He like slashes his face along the way, so he has the scars later on. And then Preacher Boy just like smashes the guitar with the silver driven to his head, not killing him somehow, but I guess it has to like go into the heart or something. I don't know. But anyways, driven to the head, and still lives, while everyone else around them feels it, and then they die that way. So I wish they did play a little more music, because it would have made sense for this movie, right? And they get distracted long enough for the movie, or the sun to come up, thus concluding that part of the movie. But there's a little more action to it. Smoke stabs him from behind, yes, all that stuff, which doesn't make sense. See, this is where I also would have loved to see that change, because how is it that Smoke was able to sneak up on the head vampire when everyone else is like behind them, right? That's why I would have preferred the music, because I think to me it would have made more sense. But that happened. And then of course there was a twist in the movie, not just the vampires but also the KKK, right? It turns out that the landlord is like the grand wizard of this Ku Klux Klan division or whatever, this group of KKK. And what they do is they lure people to think that they bought this joint, right? But then they come in the next morning and then they just shoot up the place. And that's why in the beginning, when Smoke and Stack were checking out the place, one of them was like, hey, what, there's something about the floor or something, they're talking about something about like cleaning up the floor or something. So yeah, turns out they use this place quite a bit of times, and of course there's a lot of blood left behind. They gotta clean it up, but sometimes stuff like this gets exposed or hinted, which was all revealed, by the way, thanks to Remick, because as a head vampire, if he bit the couple, right, and they had the KKK stuff, so he bit them and had their memories, right? Because that's how it works in this movie. He got into their heads and saw what their sort of scheme was, which is again the joint. They get shoot up in the joint, rinse and repeat. So he just says it outright, hey, blah blah blah, right? But if you become a vampire, you won't be able to racism won't be a thing, because we all love each other, blah blah blah. You'll be free. You can't die. You're powerful. You can pretty much end racism in the way that's like the implication. But of course, you're not free-willed, right? When you're a vampire, there's all that stuff. But anyway, so that was how it was revealed, which is pretty cool, I guess. Which led to that said satisfying action scene with the guns and everything. So I thought, he brought the BAR, the Tommy guns, of course, and the grenade, pistol, you name it, man. That was pretty cool, I thought. Unfortunately, though, yes, Smoke dies. He passes away after getting a bullet wound in the side, but I guess it caused massive bleeding. But he just pretty much let it happen. He went out with a bang, literally. And although I did think thought that last part, the very last moment where he just shoots up the Grand Wizard, that was very satisfying, I thought. And there was a moment where, yes, he's crossing to the afterlife, essentially, seeing his wife and his kid, because yes, the kid died early, unfortunately, and he tried to smoke, but his past wife said, "Hey, don't do that, the baby's here." And then the Grand Wizard interrupted him, shoots the hell out of him. That was pretty funny, actually. But yeah, he like put a lot of holes in that guy. That was pretty satisfying. But yeah, that's how he went. And of course, Preacher Boy was a sole survivor, and doesn't really, of course, explains what happens right after. He had that piece of the guitar. I guess he was able to either get a brand new guitar or got it repaired. I don't know what the hell was up with that. But later, 1992, he's old, but he has been established as this famous blues player. And by the first end credit scene, he's about to wrap it up. But then, of course, Stack and Mary, having to escape that whole scene, were able to live a very long life, and they're still young, right? Being vampires, they're immortal, can't die from aging. They come in, and they're kind of like, "Hey, what's up, man? I let you live because that's what I promised with my brother, right? Because he could have killed him, right? But he was let go with a promise, with essentially a pact that he gets to live, but you have to let Preacher Boy live." So maybe that's what vampires do. They follow pacts. They honor them to the T, right? As well. I forget if that's true or not, but anyway, they do that. But then Stack is able to sense that Preacher Boy's time is near to the end, and he's like, "Hey, I can bite you, and you can become one of us and live forever," and such. And Preacher Boy is essentially like, "I've seen enough. I'm good." And then he plays one more little song. They're satisfied with it because blues is something you want to listen in person, not on the disc. And they're satisfied and they leave, pretty much. Which would have been interesting to see, seeing these vampires live throughout World War II, and then the 60s, the 70s, 80s, and up to the 90s, of course. That would have been pretty fun to see, but yeah, maybe not. Maybe for a sequel that we will never get. But anyway, but one of the things that I wish were answered was what happened with the daughter of Bo and Grace, right? I wish there was some sort of hint that she lived, how she lived. And maybe it would be nice to see her come into the bar and have some sort of experience with vampire hunting. I don't know. That would have been kind of poetic in a way, maybe. But then you had the Mohawkins, I think they were called, right? Pretty much the Native Americans who know how to fight these vampires, and they're very aware of the vampire game, right? I wish there was also another hint of them living on. Maybe one of them could have been the bartender or something. That would have been really cool, Also poetic in a way. But yeah, because I wish the Mohawkins could have played a little more of a role, but they're kind of just there to establish a warning. Oh yeah, so earlier with the Native American stuff, it was not Mohawken or whatever. Forgive me for that. It's Choctaw. The Choctaw were the Native Americans referenced in this movie. So please forgive me for that. That was a misspoke. I did not mean for that to happen. It was kind of like that word that came to mind, I guess. when I was trying to explain that part. Oh yeah, there was also that one weird scene I wanted to address. It was the dude who was like laying in this like black thing, and I was like, wait, what the heck is going on? Like, did he get bit? But then something turned him back somehow. And then maybe like I thought, oh, maybe the beer, right? The I think it was like Irish beer or something. Which is funny because yeah, the Remick is Irish, and the Irish were oppressed, yes, also in the way, which is why they formed a gang, and they were the first gangsters, and all that stuff, history. Anyway, there was that thing about Irish beer that Slim drank earlier. He's like, oh man, it's good. And so I thought that the Irish beer was something that was going to help turn them back, right? You know, but that was kind of a nothing burger. I don't know what happened with that scene. It was like the guy laying on the ground. I guess he like fell asleep or something. I don't know. He just ran out. And then he's like, oh, let me back in. Let me back in. You know, and he got bit by cornbread and all that. Yeah, I mean, there's just some weird little things that went on and just didn't quite finish well. And then, of course, I wanted to talk more about the actual action scene with the vampires. I just wish it was just well executed better. I mean, Grace just went for her husband. I do understand that, but I wish Grace had a little more to it. She just, yeah, tried to do the Molotov cocktail thing, but she kind of like, she was like her own enemy. She burned herself, but also burned her husband along with herself. I get it, but I don't know, just that felt a little unsatisfying. And then I don't know, the overall execution and the choreography of that part was just like, and it wasn't as satisfying as I would have loved to see. Unlike the KKK shootout scene, you know, there was a part with, I think it was Smoke that shot someone in the kneecap or something. That was like, okay, I get it. You know, you don't fuck with, you don't get fucked with. Okay, I get it. And then there's that whole talk from Grace, like, hey, you shot that guy in the knee, you know, but then your own brother, that you love, got turned into a fucking vampire. Now you're gonna act all emotional, like, hey, like, I mean, yeah, it's his brother, yeah, whatever, but it's like, oh, you know, now is the time to really act up, you know, be a man, I guess you could say. But anyway, I just wish that whole choreography would have been a little more, had a little more oomph to it. But then again, this is supposed to be a little more on the realistic side, so really, this was a losing battle. I wish also for Delta to have something in his hand that would have been like, okay, you know, hey, look over here, you know, Kanye's blood and everything, and then have like another Molotov cocktail and then boom or something, like, I don't know. It would have been a little more satisfying as well, because he was talking about as if he dealt with the devil before, and you know, if you want to get preacher boy, you gotta get through me, kind of thing. So I wish his ending would have been a little more, well, explosive. No pun intended, but yeah, anyway, I think overall that stuff could have been a little more executed better. So I don't know. That's really all I have to say about that part. That was the big part too. The other part I wanted to mention too is that, yes, there was a scene where Preacher Boy, he's playing, and then they play up the whole fact that, yeah, blues brings the good and evil, but it also brings the past, but for some reason the future. So the guitar came in, like the electric guitar, like Jimi Hendrix kind of guy came in, was playing. I felt that it was a little awkward, and it actually played that part a little too long. I wish they kept it from the past. I would have been okay with that. But hey, I get it. You know, maybe it's supposed to be, this is supposed to be like a big celebration of like music that influenced or had something to do with the black community. So, you know, it's a big celebration thing. That part I get, but I think the future part was a little too ambitious to fit into this part of the story, I guess. A little hard to explain. But I had no problems with the past, right? The ancestors that were playing their part of the music. And some people brought up like, oh, then you have these Chinese warriors or Chinese dancers or whatever, which is a little weird, but you have to remember that there was grace and bow. And then, you know, music is like for everybody. So I get it. They brought in the Chinese dancers to kind of like express that fact. But I also wished that if you're going to do that, then why not also have the Chinese instruments too, if you're going to go that far. The remix music was pretty cool that I found. I mean, it's music. I liked it. It was well executed there. And then, you know, you had the whole Irish dancing part, which I thought was a little funny, but hey, I mean, I get it. He's Irish, you know. I think they should all got their part of the music celebration thing. So it really boils down to like, yes, you know, good and evil sort of love music, and they use it as a way to express themselves in this world. So that is something I found to be fascinating, you know, and since it was executed that way. You know, and there's also the Sinners, right? The whole Sinners theme, why they're called the Sinners. You could say that, yes, obviously Smoke and Stack, they're gangsters, so obviously they're going to commit sins. Pearline, she was married, but she became unfaithful because she partake in the, you know, the love making with Preacher Boy. So that's like a sin right there. Cornbread, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, he did some petty stuff, I don't know. Delta Slim, it's hard to say, right? But he said he dealt with the devil before, so I don't know, maybe like drugs or something. I'm not sure. So he's a sinner, I guess. And then, of course, you get the KKK members, the couple especially. Yeah, see, I'm not sure about Grace and Bo, and why would they be the sinners as well? I don't know, maybe they like this, there's some shady business, especially with Smoke and Stack. So by then they, you know, are part of that part of the underworld or something. That I'm not super sure. So yeah, I guess that's it for the sinners part. I mean, if that's the case, okay. But I guess it's the fact that, yeah, you know, but by the fact that you're willing to take up the guitar and play the devil's music, quote unquote, you are a sinner. And, you know, you kind of like especially when Preacher Boy literally like disobeys his dad, who is a priest. That's also like giving yourself to the devil almost. And there, again with the devil thing, there's like theories around the guitar that, well, because the guitar actually belonged to the twins' dad, that guitar is a symbol of the fact that the dad actually sold his soul to the devil, so that guitar is like cursed. Therefore, because Preacher Boy was able to play it really well, Remick is like, oh, we want him so that we can summon more of the community to come together. And of course they're like, nah, you can't have him. You know, that's not your choice for him, for how he lives. Yeah, so there's a lot of like theories about like, you know, how or what the guitar is essentially. And so I wish they explained more about it. They would have kind of like gone into why this whole thing is happening in the first place. Is it just the fact that blues just does that in this world, or Is it the guitar? Is it something about Preacher Boy that has the ability to do so? A lot of questions from there, I think. But then, of course, yes, there was one more thing I did want to mention. It is that, no matter how bad things can be, there's always some good in them. It's kind of like the yin and yang thing, which is more on the Chinese stuff, but funny enough. But like, it's it happens, right? Especially during even on like what appeared to be the most terrible day of your life. There can be a moment where, well, you've actually had the greatest time of your life. And they reference that by saying, by playing the music, they're dancing and everything, they're in that little joint, they're for that moment free from the landlord and like all the KKK people and all that stuff, And that's kind of like a silver lining kind of thing, and I think that's not a beautiful thing. I don't think that's the word for it, but it's kind of wholesome almost, because you're able to see the good in the bad, and it kind of happens in real life, right? It's like that shitty job you have, but then you have all the friends you got that you made from work. I can kind of sympathize with that sort of aspect, and that does get talked about, especially by the end of the movie, where yes, Preacher Boy's old, and yeah, for him, it was actually the best day of his life. And by taking up the guitar, he is essentially, his love for music overcomes the horrible things that he saw on that night. Because normally, that guitar would have been like a reminder of like the vampire stuff. And so a normal person would have been like, nah, I'm going to burn this guitar, or I'm going to keep this guitar away from me. But this guy loved blues or playing blues so much that he was willing to put up with that and keep playing pretty much. And yeah, it paid off. He became a famous blues player. So yeah, and he lived a pretty good life at that point. So yeah, 60 years in fact. But I kind of wish, they would have like shown some part of the process getting there. But yeah, they did also mention like, not only for Preacher Boy, but Smoke and Stack, well, at least for Stack, it was his best day of the life, because he was able to see the sunset with his brother as free people in a way. They were free for that moment. And of course, when they're dancing, they're having a fun time in that joint, they also felt pretty free. And then like the very last credit scene that I mostly missed for the most part, Preacher Boy is back to his old self, his younger self, excuse me, and he plays his guitar in an empty church. And for the most part, I think what that symbolizes is the fact that he is now dead. He passed away, but he's by himself. He just plays his guitar, play more blues. That's all he wants. It's for a guy like him, it's pretty simple. He likes the simple things in life. He just wants blues, and he just wants to keep having to play blues. And that's it. That's all he wants for the rest of his life. Despite of how much it would have reminded him of the vampire stuff. How vile that was. But nah, man, when he was playing it, it was the best day of his life. He made love to a woman. He got to play blues. He had to have friends. He drank. He had the chance to be merry, right? Happy. So, yeah, I can definitely see that. Yes, and then you got the church being the opposite. Hey, don't play this music. It's the devil's music. And yeah, I mean, in this instance, I guess it was right, but for him, he didn't care that much. He loved music that much. He loved the blues. And so do the good, and so do evil. Right? And yeah, again, you know, hey, be a vampire, you'll be free. Not really. that whole thing. So, all right, I think that's pretty much it for spoilers. That's all I got. Sorry for the little interruption because the mic receiver died along the way, but yeah, that's pretty much it, really, for Sinners. Again, it was a 7.5 out of 10 for me, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for what it was. Very reminiscent to Dusk Till Dawn to me. The more I think about it, especially, well, the brother dying and everything else. But obviously, there's a little more to it than that. You know, it has its own flavor, and I enjoyed it. So, anyways, comments down below. What do you guys think of Sinners? Any theories? Any thoughts relating to the movie? So anyways, that's it for me. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps out, and I do appreciate it. So that's it for my movie review for Sinners. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Sean out.